Well, Chase, I just flew into town and boy, are my arms tired. Hey-oh.
Terrible.
Been waiting
It's
to say
bad.
that literally all week. I have a question for you. I don't think you travel all that much. I mean, you go to your folks and stuff, but
Yeah, I traveled by car a decent amount of like 6 hours at least a month.
what is your least, like, what makes you the most uncomfortable about being away from your home?
Everything. um uh Man, when I'm not home,
Mhm.
I just find it really hard to relax at all. To like
Yep.
get to a spot where like I just either I feel like I'm a guest, or just like I can't quite be on edge. Even if I would be doing the exact same thing at home,
Yep.
there's just something about it that doesn't feel as comfortable. I'll tell you probably the worst thing though is sleep. Like sleeping away from
Sure.
my bed
Yeah.
is rough. It's
Yeah.
not. I mean, sleeping for me is terrible anyway. I feel like I have like 1,000 things that try to help me sleep in some form or fashion, and you're not taking all of those on the road with you. So
Right.
then it's trying to do that with fewer of those things, like fan noise or music playing or my pillow, the pillow island, not my pillow, not Mike Lindell, fuck that guy, but
Right.
my personal pillow that I use and
I'll
like
bring my pillow if it's by car. If I drive somewhere, my
sure.
pillow is in the car with me.
Yep.
This is not an endorsement for them, but I use a pillow cube.
Oh, I've seen the YouTube
Yep.
things.
Yep.
I always seem to skip at it at the 5 second mark where they go pillow in a cube, and then before they
Yep.
actually explain it, it's like, okay, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
out of here. But you like it?
Oh my God. As a side sleeper, it has been one of the best things I've done for myself.
Nice. Well,
Uh,
also not an endorsement, but I have the purple pillow,
okay.
and I'm
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with that one as well.
Uh,
I don't have the purple mattress, but I did like
Sure.
the pillow.
So I obviously like this. So this past week I traveled for work. I was by myself. Traditionally, when I travel, it's with my wife. But this week I was gone away, no dogs, no wife. That was really like the routines of like bedtime. Like there's a big bedtime routine,
Mm-hmm.
that was weird. But
It's just like the
quiet's
unnerving
weird.
to you.
Well, just like there's things that like, so we have two corgis. They're short, long dogs. Like even just like I'm the one every night that takes them out the last time, and I lift them both up and put them into bed. And so they wait by the stairs while it's Sarah here. They're like, okay, we're ready for bed. Like, but who's gonna pick us up? And so like just little shit like that is always strange.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say like the last few years, like I'm not going to go into details for the sanity of everybody here. Um, but if anytime I've traveled, not having a bidet is terrible. I absolutely hate it. And oh man, I absolutely hate it. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
I've gone back and forth on whether I should actually try that.
It's so strange that that's even like, and I get it. I
Yeah.
get that statement. It's just so strange that there is a faux pas in America
Mm-hmm.
about that technology where it's so standard everywhere else. And it's just like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't even see it as a faux pas exactly. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's more of just it's just a lack of understanding. It's like I've never seen one or experienced one, Or like if I have been in a bathroom that has one, I'll be like, well, I don't know how this works, and I'm not going to try it now.
Listen, Chase, I'm big on bidets, okay? Like,
Yeah,
and the way that was explained to me, they're like, if you if you go outside and you get dirt on your hands, what's the first thing that you do? I'm like, I wash
sure.
my hands. And they're like, okay, so like explain that to me. I'm like, well, I go inside, I try not to touch anything until I put my hands, like I kind of elbow the faucet. I put water and soap on my hands, wash my hands. Like, okay. So you
Yeah, you
just
don't
don't
just take a
grab
dry paper
yeah,
towel and wipe your hands with it. Yes,
right.
absolutely.
And when I thought about it that way, I was like, oh, okay. But I mean, it is a very alarming for the first time of that. Like there's like even though you're controlling it,
Uh huh.
like there's
It's
it's
a
like
unique sensation.
it is a very cold Jack in the Box. Now some of them can be heated. The way that our like the one that we have can be hooked up to a hot water line, but
Uh huh.
so our sink and toilet are perpendicular rather than parallel, and so I can't run it correctly over to it.
Mm.
And but you know what? Like let's say you have a couple spicy chicken sandwiches. Let's say it's
Sure. I mean,
summertime.
it's very refreshing.
It's very refreshing. It is like there's a few things that I'll tell people in life. Like I've not met a single person yet that has got one that's like this was a terrible decision.
Sure.
So anyway, I am endorsing bidets. I'm pro bidet.
I haven't gotten there yet. I can see myself going that way eventually, but I have told myself, hey, my advice to other adults in the room is you deserve two things. One of them is a very comfortable bed. Like, yes, it's expensive. You're going
Yep.
to use that thing literally every night. You should have a comfortable bed.
Yep.
And number two, get the better toilet paper. Like life is too
Well,
short
let me
to
caution
get
you.
like the one ply garbage. Like get yourself something quilted, get yourself something nice. Just
Listen,
let yourself
you're
feel better.
I know what you're saying, but if you go to any plumber
Mm-hmm.
and you ask them what the number one culprit for their jobs are, it's toilet.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fancy toilet paper.
Yeah.
And if you get a bidet, the toilet paper might as well retire. Hang their jersey up. You don't need it.
Yes. And I can totally see myself updating that second one if the day ever came. But for now, I'm like, hey,
Not only does bidets clean up shit, Chase, we clean up shit. And Johnny's
true.
not
We
here
we
tonight.
we cleaned up one third of the shit on this
We clean
show.
up one turd on the show, not one third.
Damn it.
Johnny is out with COVID. It finally caught him. And if you've been keeping track, I'm going to make two statements here. Chase is the only member of the casual hour that is pure. Chase is
That I know of. Like I've always tested negative. It's certainly possible that I could have gotten it at some point and never had
Sure.
symptoms and just went on blissfully with my life. But
Yeah.
yes, it has not been confirmed. And also, like this is Johnny's first confirmed case, but there's definitely been other times where he's like, "Oh, I feel like shit for 2 weeks." That's most weeks, honestly.
You are,
and it just
though.
hadn't been confirmed yet, so I don't think he was very pure to begin with. But now we have the receipts.
I was thinking about it because he sent the message when I was literally up in the air. I don't think I have anybody in my life except for you that has not gotten COVID. You are the only person that I am either related to or know that
Yeah,
I would say that I interact with regularly. I should say that
yeah.
um, doesn't have it. So
I mean, it's the perks of living alone and working from home and not really having much of a reason to leave this house. I mean,
look,
I go out and I see some people and I do some stuff, but for the most part, I'm here,
sure.
and it's tough to get sick when you're just not interacting with people.
I'm going to make a quick technical note for anybody who's watching this. You brought it
Mm-hmm.
up after we recorded last week. Um, I have to replace my camera. So, I mean, I've got a second camera, but it's not really set up for this type of show.
Yeah.
So I need to replace my camera. You might see a little flickering there. I apologize about that, but I will be taking care of that this weekend. So hey, welcome to the Casual Hour. We are a butt cleaned, COVID free podcast tonight. But we are going to be doing what you've been playing. So that means we're going to tell you about the games that we've been checking out. We're going to cover some news. We're going to be going over some games tonight like Chained Echoes. We're going to be talking about Outpath, the first journey. I think we're going to talk a little bit about some Pokemon, if you ever heard about that. And maybe even a game called Legend of the River King. And then in the back half of the episode, we'll have some news. So you should stick around for all those things. But it's going to be a good time with just Chase and I. So Chase, I would love to know what you've been up to.
Well, as you remember, last week we spun a wheel, and it landed on Legend of the River King for my 2023 backlog roulette. This is one of my New Year's resolutions that I wanted to clear out more of my backlog, and to do that, I kind of gamified it in a way. I had about 90 different games up there.
That's true.
That
There's a lot.
Spun.
It was wild.
I'll tell you, I've added a little bit to that list, not just the one that you and Johnny each gave me, but I added a few more there just to.
And
keep
when
some
can
stuff
people
in there.
hear from that list again in action?
Officially, we're going to do that for the February preview.
Okay.
Part of me, because I did finish Legend of the River King, it's a very short game. I finished it within a week, and I was like, oh man, maybe I should spin that wheel again. And then I thought, no, you dumbass, you have Fire Emblem in literally 8 days. You do not spin the wheel. You're going to end up hitting like some 100-hour JRPG, because of course you would. You've done your thing for the month. Save it for the next month. So yeah, we'll spin the wheel again for the February preview. But until then, I did play Legend of the River King on my analog pocket. The game originally came out for the Game Boy, and I think there was a Game Boy Color specific upgrade version that came out as well.
Okay.
But I played the Game Boy version, so it kind of had, when you played. I'm trying to think of a game that would have had this exactly. Oh, well, I mean, you just play like a normal Game Boy game on a Game Boy Color, and it kind of gave it a palette, but it wasn't in full color. That's what this was with the Analog Pocket. This is a fishing RPG. It's made by Victor Software Interactive and published by Natsume. Natsume is the publisher behind Harvest Moon. And this game has a lot of Harvest Moon look to it. Some pixel art that you'd look at, you go, this might be like a Harvest Moon game. It's fine. It's not great.
I read your article.
Yes, I do have an article up there on my blog website, whatever the fuck, gamersonthego.com. You can go there right now and read my full thoughts on, well, I guess it's not my full thoughts. I tried to pull back. I did write about 600 words about how fucking obtuse is the wrong word, but just so needlessly deep it is to try to just bait your hook to get the right bait and tackle going. It's such a huge process. I'm not going to go through it all here, but I will give you a couple more details. So you have a number of different rods you can use. There's just like the normal ones. There's a casting rod that's basically the same thing, except now you have a little bit more control on reeling it in. This is all before you catch a fish. It's just, so like the normal one you start with, you put it in the water and that's it, and you can take it out of the water. Then you have a casting rod where you can kind of throw it and pull it in a little bit more before taking it out of the water. Then you have a spinner rod that can use the spinner lures. And I never figured out how to use those. I tried it. It's like a different mini game on how you catch the fish with that. Never understood it once. I'm like, okay, and the game never really needed you to. So I was like, I'm not fucking with this. And then you have a fly rod, and so that starts that way. And then so if you go back to the regular rods, there's a bunch of different baits that you can put on. and there's like eight or nine different kinds of bait that you can use. So it's worms, or it's a frog, or it's a dough ball, and different kinds of fish like different kinds of bait.
Sure.
And so if you throw, because the fish in the region, kind of like a Pokemon thing, they show up in specific areas. If you can kind of go, okay, I think this kind of fish is generally around here, throw it in. But if you have the wrong bait, the fish just aren't going to touch it. Then you have your you can have a bobber or a sinker. Never understood the difference there. I mean, I know in reality what the difference is between those two things, but couldn't figure out what that difference made in the game, and also was unnecessary. So I never ended up touching that. And then you also have a size of hook. So you have small hooks, medium hooks, and large hooks. And I feel like there's 5 different sizes of fish in the game, from, or maybe 4. Maybe okay. It's just 4. Maybe it's tiny, kind of small, kind of big, and giant. And each hook can work on 2 types of fish. So if the small hook works on the tiny and the kind of small, the medium works on the kind of small and kind of big, and then the big works on the kind of big and the giant. This is all ridiculous. This is just for one type of rod.
That's a lot to follow, man.
Yeah, that's just for the regular rods. But then if you try the lure rod, the ones with the spinners, you have a bunch of different lures that all work in for different fish, and then the flies have the same thing. Except I found out there's just one type of fly that works for basically every fish. It works for every single story specific fish in the game except for the very final one. And unlike the bait, which you have like 10 of when you buy them, and every time a fish bites, you lose that one bait because the fish took the bait.
Yeah, they took the bait.
So eventually you have to go back to the store and buy more of the bait. The flies are just reusable. You can just okay, I just keep going. I'm just going to keep fishing. Eventually they'll break, but they break. They're really resilient, and then buying another one is relatively cheap, and then you have it forever again. And that catches everything. It's game breaking. And then the final fish, the one that you're really after to finish the game, you need a very specific kind of thing. But it's not that big of a deal. It's just, I went back and forth between, this is like a really relaxing, it's a fishing game. Fishing games are supposed to be relaxing. This is kind of like a Pokemon looking JRPG, that top-down view, that Harvest Moon look, where you're just kind of navigating a space and it feels very cozy and comfortable. There's only 4 areas in the game that you kind of go between, and all of those areas are relatively small. There's no map, which is a little annoying because I feel like that. It'd be nice to have a little bit of a map, but the areas are relatively small. You're not going to really get lost, or you're not going to get lost to the point where you can't figure out your way back. So it is very cozy and comfortable on one hand. And on the other hand, the game has a bunch of different mechanics in there to just make it a terrible survival-y game experience. You have HP. It feels like a JRPG because you can hit random battles against monkeys or snakes or bats, and you have to fight them. I think the battle system is actually really interesting. The power of your attacks is based on the amount of health you have remaining. So if an enemy hits you first and knocks out half your health, your punches do jack shit. But it's the same as the other way. If you get like a nice punch on that demon cat before it can attack you, its attacks go way down, and then it's not even a big deal.
But it seems like you don't like this game.
I don't really like it. I kind of respect what it's doing. I'm actually really interested to see what they did in the sequel. There is a direct sequel, Legend of the River King 2, and then there is also a handful of other games. Some games that we got here in America, some that we didn't. I'd like to see what they do with a sequel. Part of me worries that, they probably took out the cheap way to catch all the fish, which means I'd have to grapple with more of the fishing style mechanics,
Sure.
which I don't love. But also maybe they took away some of these elements that just makes it feel like a grindy, shitty experience instead of a relaxing fishing experience. So part of me is intrigued and wants to know what did they do with these mechanics going forward. And the other part of me goes, I did it. It was fine. I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm free.
you get your shit. Okay.
But yeah, so I felt good that one down, 11 to go. I got to write about it for Gamers on the Go, and I'm glad I experienced it. I'm glad I have that knowledge under my belt, and looking forward to the next one. Hopefully, it goes just as smoothly. But I have a feeling this is one of the shorter games on that wheel, so
fair enough.
We'll see what happens.
That was Legend of the River King.
Yeah. 1998 for the Game Boy. Speaking of 1998 on the Game Boy, have you ever heard of a game called Pokemon Red and Blue?
Yeah, we talked about them last week, right?
Yeah, maybe 2 weeks ago. Yeah, relatively recently. Do you know that game got a sequel?
No, because I'm not a sicko that does what you do.
Well, it was called Pokemon Gold and Silver. They were direct sequels to Red and Blue. You've played those games.
They weren't. Can you really refer to them?
You played Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
Can you refer to them as sequels at this point in time?
Absolutely, you can. You go back to Kanto, things have changed. Kanto's changed. You meet Red at the end of that game. You meet the protagonist from the first game. Yeah, and you battle him at the end. Yeah. That's absolutely a sequel. An enterprising person has decided to make another sequel to Gold and Silver. And I'm not talking about Ruby and Sapphire. I'm talking about Pokemon Red 2. This is a fan game. It's made by a person named L, who I follow on Twitter, who seems to be a pretty cool person, but they are making Pokemon fan games. Fan games are a little different than ROM hacks. So I know you've heard me talk about Pokemon ROM hacks before. That is taking an original game or taking one of the Pokemon games and going in and fucking with the code and doing whatever you want with it. This is a completely ground up different thing. It is based on I forgot what it's called. Like some of these fan games kind of have like a base template. Sometimes people make them in like RPG Maker. Sometimes there's like a different set of tools or a different engine that people make these things in. So I forgot what this one's in, but it's the issue is I can't play it on my analog pocket. It's not a Game Boy game. This is a PC game.
Could you flash the cart with it?
No. This is an executable. So I got to play it on a PC. I could play it on a Steam Deck potentially.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I didn't. I would like to maybe at some point. I also say this is a demo. This is a very early demo. This is like the first playable thing we've gotten of this. It's only 2 towns, technically 3. It doesn't even have the first gym battle in the game. But L released this demo so people could try it out, and I think it's really cool. It takes place 5 years after the events of Pokemon Gold and Silver, and you play as Red, who you would have faced in Mount Silver in Gold and Silver, and Red is coming back to Pallet Town, and things have changed. The whole world of Kanto has changed. There's been some climate events that have happened. A bunch of different Pokemon are in here. Some completely brand new Pokemon, some kind of corruptions of current Pokemon. And I think all that stuff is really interesting. So you get starters.
It now. It looks am I seeing this correctly? Not to cut you off, but
no, go for it.
Are there like talking heads in this?
Yes, that is something Elle specifically does with her games, is that she likes having the talking heads in there that she builds through the pixel art.
And she does all the art?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's a cool touch. You see some other games kind of do that too, but that's something she does for all of her projects. And but like you get different starters in this. You get
Okay.
Alolan versions of Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, and Pikachu, which had to be brand new. The only one that is reused is your Alolan Pikachu would evolve into Alolan Raichu, which is the one that surfs on its own tail. But all the rest of them are brand new variations
Yeah,
that L has made.
I'm watching Spearow right now.
Spearow is now a flying ghost, and it's like a skeleton of a Spearow.
Yeah.
Rattata is now a ground type, a normal ground type, and is dug itself into the ground. Some Pokemon are still the way they were, like the regular ass Pidgeys in there, regular Nidoran male and female are in there. So it's not completely different, but what I think is the most interesting is just kind of the lore stuff that L has gone in and built in. That Blue is not there. Blue or Gary Oak or Professor Oak's grandson is not around, but he's sent kind of his own protege to be a new rival to Red. The Viridian Forest burned at one point, and all the bugs were taken to like a bug sanctuary. But that also means that the Viridian Gym, because they turned the Viridian Gym into this bug sanctuary, so now they needed a new place for the Viridian Gym to be. So L's made this new town called Vanilla Town, and you can go there from Viridian City, and that's where the first gym's going to be.
That's cool.
I just think it's neat. I think it's a really neat idea. I kind of wish it was a ROM hack, because then I could play it on a system, like an analog pocket.
I mean, is this run? Is there a Linux version?
I mean, no, but yeah, like you could put Windows on a Steam Deck and make it work if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
But it works fine. And again, this demo is not going to take you very long. It took me, I don't know, 20 minutes, and that was because I was grinding a little bit and trying to see some other Pokemon. It's not a super polished thing. There's definitely some parts that are a little bit busted, but again, this is an extremely early demo, and I think it's got a lot of promise. One of the other things I really like in this is that she's added the kind of modern Pokemon style that anytime you do anything with your lead monster, it's got the experience share that's already built in. You get the running shoes super early. She's also added in, whenever you pick up items in the game, the item actually could be 3 different things, and you pick left, middle, or right, and you get a different thing based on that. In fact, there are some specific item boxes called like premium item boxes that say, hey, do you want it to be Pokeballs? Do you want it to be, maybe a health item, or do you want it to be straight money? And you can take that choice and get a random version of that based on what you want. So I think there's a lot of really cool ideas in here. Again, I think the most interesting thing is the lore implications. But then also you get into some stuff where it's a little edgelordy humor stuff. I mean, it doesn't
assumed it might. I mean, look, I saw some of this shit and I was like, okay, this is gonna probably be this.
You get that with ROM hackers too, where everybody wants to add in their own style, and I get that, but sometimes it just sounds incongruous with what Pokemon is, especially when you're making something that you're claiming is a sequel to the Pokemon Generation 1 and Generation 2 storylines. It feels a little bit weird. Elle said there's no swearing in this demo, but there will be some swearing and stuff that goes on in the final release. And I'm like, I just think that's a little strange. I just think that's really weird. It just feels weird to me. Like I've played some Pokemon ROM hacks that have the swearing in it, and it just feels weird. It feels silly to try to shove that stuff in there, or like more adult themes into a Pokemon game. It's a Pokemon game, kind of. I don't know. Anyway,
so that's the Pokemon Red 2 demo.
Yeah. And then lastly, and I imagine this is going to be a bigger conversation for both of us, because we've both been playing this, you a lot of this and me a lot of it recently. Chained Echoes, which I think I don't want to lead off with something bad, Because
Oh, you don't? Weird.
I actually really, really like this game, and I'm very excited to talk about why I like this game with you. But since I mentioned it in Pokemon Red 2, I think it's really weird that this game has swearing in it. Like the story is like, ah, you piece of shit, and I'm like, where the fuck did that come
It's
from?
a super like there. It's a like it is. It is easily like construed to be a 16-bit era SNES game, but
Yeah.
back then it was unheard of like to take language into a game. So I think that there's a weird thing happening here. But in all honesty, like I would say this is like in tone a bit more mature than games that look like this. And they're not doing a bunch of shit. Like there's some goofy stuff there, but I would say
Yeah.
the further I've gotten into it and just some of the like story beat stuff that starts to happen with this, it's not like when I say mature, like it's dealing a lot more with like intimacy and relationship and that sort of stuff that like these other games have, but it's not like your princess is another castle relationship. There's like
Hmm.
torn apart spirit type stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean the themes it's going for are not
Mhm.
kiddie or not necessarily all ages, but it's not. I think if it wasn't for the swearing, this game, I could see recommending this to a younger kid of going like, hey, this is a really cool RPG that you should try out. And when it has just some kind of just kind of from out of nowhere swearing that feels really
It can be a little
unnecessary
strange
for the
for
game.
sure.
It feels a little off-putting. That's the only thing that really feels off-putting to me. That and the movement. I think your characters move a little too fast and I run into
I really
stuff
like
all the
that.
time.
I love that.
I hate it in a town because then I'm just like
Okay.
running into buildings all the time and just hitting dead ends and having troubles there. It is like you cook when you're
Oh
out in the
yeah. Yeah.
overworld, and that
There's
feels
no
a little bit
slog.
better. That feels better, but yeah, when you're in a constrained space and your characters just run so fast, that feels a little weird. So my complaints, those are the only two. The rest of the
Fair.
game, holy shit, the rest of the game.
Dude, I'm telling you right
Bobby,
now,
why didn't
it's
you tell me that Chained Echoes was a good game? Why didn't you tell me I would like Chained Echoes? Where have you
I
been?
I'm telling you right now, man, like I think that our game of the year conversation might have been different in some areas, some categories. I don't know, man. Like I don't know where it would have ended up. It certainly would be in my top 10.
I
Um,
needed this game to come out a month earlier.
yeah. So let me just do a quick pulse check with you on where you're at before we start to
Sure.
talk about why the game kicks ass. I just wrapped up chapter 2.
I have not seen anything that's in chapter 2. I'm 12 hours in.
You're in the
Um,
prologue.
okay, I am on an airship.
Like like you have one or you're
No,
okay.
I am on the Pegasus right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Okay.
Um so this game fucking rules. We've done a quick look
Yes.
for it. I don't know. Dude, it's been a week. I think our quick look is technically up on YouTube, but I don't think I've like advertised it on our socials.
Mm.
Um but we have a quick look up for it. We've talked about it a little bit here on the show. I think Johnny's chimed in. I've certainly shared some of my hot takes on it. But this is one of the better JRPGs I've ever played.
Yeah, Johnny told me he was like about 4 hours in, and I've lapped him and then some at
Yeah,
that
I
point.
mean, shocker.
I played
Uh,
that in that night.
yeah, absolutely. So Chase, like we've talked a little bit about the mechanics before, but what is it that's clicking with you?
I think just the combat and the tinkering
Mhm.
is really where I'm having a lot of fun with this. Um, I didn't think I'd like it as we saw it initially,
Mhm.
but the game has this what do you call that bar in the top left?
The
The overdrive meter.
overdrive.
That's it.
Oh, yep.
So you have this meter that you have to build up and get into the sweet spot, but you don't want to go too far because then you're overheated and you take more damage from enemies. But if you can stay in the overdrive, this kind of middle ground, you do more damage, you take less damage, and your skills cost half as much to pull
Yep.
off. And every skill you do builds that overdrive meter and gets you
And the
further.
damage you take.
right, gets you closer to that overheat part.
Yep.
But then when you're in the overdrive meter, and the game will say, well, you could use this skill. If you use this kind of skill, then we'll take some of that heat off.
Yep.
And that skill is not always going to be the most optimal damage thing to do. And I thought that was going to be really frustrating. And it is a little bit. It is a little bit to know. I've got 3 more characters, none of whom use that type of skill. And then my 4th character who does have that type of skill is like that skill is going to be useless. It's going to miss.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be not detrimental exactly. It's just not going to move the battle forward at all. And all I'm doing is basically wasting a turn to drop that heat meter. And that can feel a little bit bad sometimes, but it doesn't happen too often. And for the most part, there is this fun balancing act of, okay, well, now I can plan out my turns a little bit. It wants me to use this type of attack within the next 4 turns or whatever. And so I can use this attack with this guy and this attack with that girl. And then this one can be the one that lowers the heat and keeps me going. I also realized the game has some items that kind of just like free to use of, hey, this can lower your overdrive. And I mean, it's also a wasted turn, but anybody can waste that turn and burn that turn instead of having to wait for the specific person. Also, one of your characters just gets a skill that says just lowers your overdrive. Like
that's super handy.
Yeah, I'll just take the hit. I can do it. That's no big deal. So I found that balance to be really interesting as I'm doing the battle. Especially because your health and your magic points, they call them tech points in here. So your health points and your TP, those go back to full after every single battle.
It's so good.
It lets you be really strategic in each battle, and it also lets you just go all out in every battle. And I find a lot of games, like I go back to something like Pokemon, which we just talked about. Every move has a certain amount of PP, and sometimes you're like, I've got to get through this big long dungeon. Should I actually use this move? Because I might need those power points, at the end of this dungeon to get through these things. I don't want to have to go back to the Pokemon Center if I don't have to. And that can feel a little bit bad. And this game says, just do the stuff. Like,
are you ready for this?
Play with the things you want to play with. What's up?
So they completely redo that system when you're in your sky armor.
Okay.
Do you want to hear about it?
Sure. Yeah, I do not have a sky armor yet. So for people who don't know, the game is kind of standard JRPG. You have a party of 4. It does have more than 4 characters. Some of them can switch in and out. And the game kind of has you. The game adds and detracts from your party every so often for story reasons, but there's a mechanic in here where you get what's called a sky armor, which is kind of like a big mech armor.
It's a mech.
Big medieval mech armor that can fly.
So the cool thing about that too is you can just call it, once you get in the game, you basically press your shoulder button and you suit up in the overworld.
Okay.
And
I think I've only ever seen all people or all sky armors. Can you kind of mix and match where one person's in a sky armor, but your other people are just normal people?
No. So the cool thing about this is the sky armor is going to be, there's different models of sky armor, but the weapons that your sky armor are equipped with are representative of the weapons that you would be using in the real world.
Sure.
It's not a 1-for-1, but you'll find vendors that will just sell new mechs. And they'll have trade-offs as well. They all look different. And then the sky armor, there's a shader system like in Destiny. And so you can go in and make your team look pretty kick-ass, I think, with this. But when you're in the overworld and you call your armor, you can only call it if there's nothing on the terrain, and they'll show tall grass or rocks. You have to be in a clear area. Once you're in it though, you're hovering and you can go over all that. And then if it's allowed, you can even fly in that level where you just fucking zoom across everywhere.
Yeah, I have found in some guides of, hey, if you want to find the hidden stuff in this area, you got to come back with the sky armor because you can't access this right now.
And they make it super easy to fast travel in the game. But let's talk about the overdrive in the mechs So it's really cool. The bar that you were describing, it goes like, I think it's blue and then it goes green, or it's yellow, then it goes green, then it goes red.
Yep.
And here it's just in the middle. And each one of you in battle, your sky armor is on a gear shifting system. So you start off on gear 1 and it's moving the needle. So on either side of that bar for your overdrive here, it's just red. So you have one yellow center with two reds. And when you're in gear 1, it's moving the needle to the right. And that's like your standard attacks. So you're just doing your shit, doing that, it's moving to the right. If you press the shoulder button, it gears up that turn. You can only gear up once, and it goes into gear 2. Gear 2 is like almost double damage on all your attacks, but also double the TP cost. And then
Okay.
that sends your bar back to the left. Then the third one completely shuts off your skills. So when you're in that, it's like a cooldown, but any item that you use has higher restorative qualities. So if you need to heal really quick or give back stuff, shift into that third gear and do it that way. So what I've found is I usually keep 2 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And like once I get to that sweet spot on the gear, then I'm just running through this and it keeps that where it needs to be. Now, if it's a tougher enemy, I might kick everybody up to 2 for a round or 2 of those. But I really like that, and the abilities that come with it are great. There's a lot more AOE, so you're hitting everybody at once, and it's really neat. Like all the enemies are just giant, and you're fighting other people in
Sure.
mechs, which is really cool. That has been like a really, like, you just call the whole animation of calling in your armor, and there's an idle engine sound when you're just cruising around when you're in your
Okay.
it's just
Yeah.
very good. It's just very, very good.
I think there's a lot of just good attention to detail
Hmm.
in here. When you're walking through the world, there's so much nice looking pixel art.
Yep.
Um,
And great music. Great
and
music.
great music too, for sure. I think some of the maps. There's a map that you can go to just by hitting. Well, I'm on Switch, so every time I
Yeah.
hit Y, you can just immediately switch to the
Same on
map,
Steam.
and that's nice. I feel like it kind of gives them an excuse to make the maps really complicated because you can just snap back at any time you want. They hide a bunch of shit in the world, and you do a lot of kind of backtracking in there, which can sometimes feel a little bad. But also, there's a lot of like little mini puzzles
Yeah.
that I just kind of like navigating through.
Yep.
And so there's kind of some push and pull there of whether I'm liking exploring the overworld or not. Um, it also does. The enemies are on the field of battle. It's not like random
I
battles like
love that.
Pokemon would be. I generally love that, except that they don't respawn until you leave the area fully and then come back. So the game has what's called a reward board that is kind of just like some in-game achievements that also give you a bunch of extra kind of currency stuff. And having those currencies are really useful for continuing to build up your characters. Also, this game has no experience points. We've talked about that before, but that makes money even more important. And then it does kind of have slightly an experience idea in these skill points, and skill points are something that you generate every time you do a battle, and that goes to all the skills that you have, but then you also get kind of a second bonus pool for every character,
Yeah.
and you can spend those bonus pool skill points to upgrade your skills even further. So that kind of functions as an XP thing. It just makes it really hard to farm for any of that stuff and to grind. And I get that the game is trying to say you don't need to grind, but also a bunch of the reward board stuff is fight 8 of these enemies. And
Yeah.
if you go through the whole level and fight all the stuff in that one area, you're going to get like 6 of those 8. And so it's saying you got to come back here another time,
So I found too
or
is
leave
that
and come back.
so like there was you might be alluding, I think it's like a horse type enemy that you need,
Oh,
like
you mean the slurs?
yes, thank you, the slurs. The
Yeah,
source is just north of Basel, if I remember correctly. I can't remember because I think it might,
I think that's right. Yeah.
or something like that. There's a really convenient fast travel. So like I would go out, wipe them out, fast travel, and I was literally just like 5 feet down from where I was. But because I did the fast travel there, which is instantaneous,
Hmm.
I just like procced those to come back out again.
And
I
some of those work out great. Some of the other ones, like there's one I need to find two more mountain bibbies, and I don't remember what mountain bibbies look like. And I've got 6 of them, and I need 8. And I've walked all around the area that they were supposed to be in before, and I'm like, I don't know where they
You're not
are.
going to
They're
believe
not
this,
close to a
Chase.
fast travel space. What's up?
They're in the mountains.
I I figured. I found 6 of them at one point. I don't know. Again, I don't know what they look like, but I know the area they're supposed to be in, and I've looked around and I can't find them. Anyway, it's not that big of a deal, and I keep trying to tell myself this game has so much stuff. It's okay if you don't experience
Totally.
all of it. And I think that even extends to some of its mechanics. It has so many mechanics, and I do like tinkering,
Yeah.
but there's almost too much stuff to tinker with. The crystals that you
I
can
have
slot in and out of armor,
barely touched them.
I barely touch it as well. And it's I think there's some really cool stuff in there. You get some
It's
some
overwhelming.
crystals. It really is. But they're very useful. You get some
Yeah.
crystals that be like, hey, this just lets you always attack first.
Yep.
And I'm like, I would like that. And it goes, okay, just slot it into your weapon. And I'm like, okay, it's slotted into the weapon. I can do that now. And then you're like, okay, well now I found a better weapon. I want to put that same thing into this new weapon. And it goes, oh, well now there's like a purity system, and
Yep.
also if you unslot it, everything's big and has no purity, and that means you can't really upgrade it. You can kind of put it into this new thing, but also it's what's called big. So now it takes up so many slots. So you actually need to upgrade this piece of armor to be able to hold more slots before you can even put it in there. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here. And then the game's like, oh, by the way, maybe you should combine these 2 crystals to make them into a better crystal. But now they lose purity if you combine them.
It's
and
Monster Hunter
like,
level of insanity.
It's too much. And
But
at
here's
some
the thing,
point,
dude.
I'm like, I'm worried if I should combine these crystals or not. Because if I do, maybe I'm fucking myself down the line where I won't have the right.
That's what I've been doing, man.
The right purity.
Here's what I'm doing. Just upgrade just don't, when I say upgrade, there's always a better version of your weapon. And so until like I've gotten to the point where I don't know if there's going to be an end game to this game. I hope there is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sitting on all that because by that time I will have the gear that like I'm okay putting stuff into. The other thing, get the speed sandals if you haven't.
Oh yeah, no.
They let you attack first.
That's the other problem. Like they have another system that does a lot of this in that there's just an accessory slot, and these accessories can do all sorts of different things. So, and a lot of those things are similar things that the crystals can do. So, it just feels like a couple too many systems. It's not a big deal because, again, you can play the game without some of these things. I'll also tell you, I've used the ultimate moves maybe like twice.
Yeah,
because
I don't
I
use them
just
that often.
forget that they're there. They're really useful. It's a super powerful move that also lowers your overdrive meter. I was like, that's and every character has a specific skill that they can use for their super skill. And some of these are brokenly good. I don't really think there's a main character exactly, but there's like the character you are with the most. His name is Glenn. He does a ton of damage to every enemy. He breaks their armor. He breaks their attack. He does. He just leaves them in the worst fucking spot.
Yeah, he's the only one I use it with.
And it's like, he's fucking great. Holy shit, I should use these more. And then I just forget to use them because they're kind of unnecessary in the whole part of the game. But it's
take your time with it, man. Here's my recommendation, okay? I just wrapped up chapter 2 or act 2.
Mm-hmm.
The game will start to do things. It's like I don't want to spoil anything, and this isn't necessarily a spoiler. You essentially will start to recruit not only like active team members.
Okay. Because
And
I have seen that there are a lot of characters that you can recruit,
yes,
and I didn't know how many are like actual party members versus other things. One of the other things this game does is on the equip screen you can see what everybody is holding,
yeah,
and some of the things that I'm holding are assigned to characters I haven't seen since the first 5 minutes of the game. And
yeah,
I'm like, well, you've never been in my official party, but for some reason, your little shadow is here saying that you have this piece
yep.
of gear on. I guess eventually I'm going to get you on my team in some form or fashion.
So not only do you have stuff like that, but like I just found somebody. All right, so you basically get a base, and it kind of
Yep.
becomes a Mass Effect 2 thing.
Okay.
But you can find people. There's a lot of people to recruit, but I just found somebody last night. They're like, "Oh, I'm a cartographer, and I love to make maps." So now, whenever I'm like, anytime I go into a new area, in the bottom left hand corner, it shows you how many chests are in that area.
Okay. That's really
Eh,
useful.
So like, there's
If
things
you don't
like
have
that.
YouTube, that's really useful.
Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to tell you is where you're at in the game, fucking enjoy it, slow roll it, do whatever you want to.
Yeah.
But that game is going to add in some quality of life that will make the things that you're probably spending time doing right now easier
Got it.
with cooler shit.
That actually sounds a lot like Suikoden too, because you also get a castle in there,
That's what this is
and
basically.
even though the point of Suikoden is that you get 108 different characters, not all of those are playable characters. Some of those are just people like, hey, I found a chef and he's going to go back to my castle and he's going to be the chef in my castle now. And yes, there's some cool story stuff and maybe there's like some mini game stuff you can do with him, but you're not bringing the chef out to battle. And so he just kind of upgrades you in some slightly different ways. That's what this kind of sounds like, and that's cool.
Yeah,
I will
it's
say
neat.
there's a ton of guides on YouTube for this stuff too, if you want to just find some stuff relatively easily. Um,
It's the
I,
best. It's like one of the best one of these games I've ever played, easily.
I'm also just really enjoying it. It
Yeah.
is the combat stuff I really like. I'm using buffs and debuffs more in this game than I normally
Same.
use in JRPGs, because I just feel like there's a lot of good combo stuff. Enemies have different strengths and weaknesses of different elements, which is nothing new, but I also have started getting these different skills on people where they can just, every time this guy hits with his sword, there's a chance to cast dry on an
Yep.
enemy. And dry isn't anything if left alone, but if you use a water attack on somebody who has the dry status, it does double damage to him, or it does like a super effective damage to him.
Dude.
So I've got one character. So the character who's got dry, he's got a move that can hit everybody, and so now there's a 25% chance that all of those people will get the dry status. And then I've got another character goes, well, I can just cast a water move that hits everybody. So anybody who was unlucky enough to get the dry status on them is now fucked, because now I can hit them for incredible
Are you
super
talking about, is
damage.
it Lynn or Lenny?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She later on gets the ability for 5 turns in a row. You can unlock and like have all 3 or 4 elements that any attack that she does will have that element you choose on it so it could even just be your standard attack.
Oh, sure.
It becomes a
Okay.
water attack. So you could cast dry and not use any of her TP and just fucking, it gets so,
Yeah.
she's broken. She's
She
absolutely,
does seem great. Like she also like she's a big caster character and she uses TP all the time. But the way I've built her, and again, I'm in the early game according to Bobby. 12 hours in, I'm in the early game. This game's like 50 hours.
yeah.
But the way I've built her up right now, I've given her a bunch of TP points. I've given her some crystals that reduce the TP cost of skills by 20%. I also gave her a skill and leveled it all the way up. So now she's got a skill called TP Save. So just there's a 15% chance that she just doesn't use TP anytime she uses a skill at all. So I've built her in a way that You know, what you said is great. Like, hey, she can use this thing and now she doesn't have to use TP because she can just get the element on her regular
Yeah.
attacks. And I'm over here like, fuck TP. She's always got TP because
Yeah.
I built her in such a way where she's never going to not have magic points.
She's one of my. She might be my favorite in the game.
I think my favorite's Sienna. I'm a big fan of Sienna.
She's so good.
She's just like a silent, she's got a katana. She just like slips through and slits throats. She's got an interesting move. I haven't gotten it yet, but she can do like triple damage on somebody who has the paralyzed status. And she has no way of inflicting the paralyzed status so far. There are ways that I could make her do that, but there are other characters that can very easily paralyze enemies. And I'm thinking now, it's like, oh, maybe I should build into that and get those people to do that, because she also has just like this amazing ability to crit. She's got a bunch of builds that you can put points into to upper crit damage, up everybody's crit. And I'm like, okay, well now I'm thinking, okay, the gears are turning. I got this one character who can paralyze everybody, and now she can do the move that triples damage against a paralyzed enemy, but also it has this increased chance to crit. And when the crit damage hits, it hits super hard. Like, there's just so many fucking cool things you can do. And we didn't even talk about the lizard who can summon weapons with his fucking mind.
I told you how good he was.
You did, and he's great.
He's one of my favorite. He might be, and he talks in the third person. Chained Echoes is good. Here's what I'd like to do.
It is good.
Something that I did not get, I had it written down. I didn't get to mention it 2 episodes ago or maybe it was one for our resolution episode. It was a resolution episode, last one. I would like for us, we don't always, so 2 things hardly happen here. Multiple of us are playing the same game at any given moment. It doesn't happen too frequently. Even less so.
Would have happened this week if Johnny decided to be on the show, but he decided to get COVID instead. So,
well, the part that I'm about to bring up would exclude him. Even less so, people finishing the games that they play together.
True.
So what I would like to do is I'd like to maybe do a spoiler cast or 2 when we can. That's the resolution for us, and I think this game absolutely would deserve something like that.
Yeah, I could see that. Again, I'm 12 hours in. It's a 50-ish hour game. Every day is just another day closer to Fire Emblem to me. But Chained Echoes is something I definitely plan to finish in 2023, and I would love to do a podcast dedicated specifically to it. I know we've talked a lot about it. You have another game you want to talk about, and I know we want to talk about some new stuff too. So let's maybe move on.
Let's talk about Outpath First Journey. This is
when you wrote that down, I thought you wrote Octopath, and I'm like, please, Bobby, why would you do that to yourself? But
no,
this is not Octopath. What is Outpath First Journey? I don't even know what this is.
Outpath First Journey is a prologue chapter for a game that's coming out this year. It is made by David Moore. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna be butchering this. Morleo Sanchez, I believe. So one guy's putting this together. It's like a PS1 era graphic skin for Minecraft is like how I would describe the visual style of this game. But there is a bounce and an animation to a lot of the elements that are in this that just look really good. It's described as a clicker based building game where you craft and manage your resources. And I think that's pretty accurate. Like, I mean, Sarah came in and she's like, oh, you're playing Minecraft. So like that should tell you what it wears on its sleeves. There's a few things here that I think are really cool though. So you start the game off.
It does have an interesting look. Like I pulled up some images here. Like it's a little bit 2D sprite stuff in a 3D voxely world.
Yeah. It looks and sounds really good. By the way, this game is sitting at an overwhelmingly positive on Steam. People seem to really be into it. It came out December 17th. It is free, so you can check out this prologue for free on Steam, and I think you should. It starts off with just a series of a few like 4x4. It's not like a grid-based game where like Minecraft is, but I would say like 4-foot by 4-foot islands. And there's a couple trees. There might be a rock. I think there might be an ore. and then there's this giant totem, and it looks a lot like the totem from Monument Valley, but it's gray.
Hmm.
And anytime that you are working in this game, you're collecting a resource that fills a meter of just like, hey, I can't remember what the currency, we'll call it currency, is, but you need 100, and you go up to this totem, and that totem's main purpose is to expand your biome. And so you dump resources into that, it expands your biome. Now you've got copper, and you can start to go down that silly rabbit hole of, I'm going to build a workbench, I'm going to build a crafting bench. I think this game, so I can't remember where I read it. It might be on here. Let me see if I can find where they talk about this. They basically talk about, hey, if you're into Satisfactory in Minecraft, you should check this out.
Oh
And
no.
I was like, what? Hello, what?
They just sung the siren song
Oh,
of
dude.
Bobby Peas.
And because look, like at this point in time, there's a lot of clones for those games out there. This one seems like it's going to have a ton of promise. It's really cool. We'll quick look this one. I think you'll like to see it in action. It has just a really
Sure.
pleasant vibe to it, but uh they don't have a date that I've seen for the full game. Oh, here we go. About the game. Taking Satisfactory Minecraft Forager and the gratifying gameplay loop of a clicker idle game, Outpath would be just that. Exploit your environment, craft, build, and automate your base in a 3D first person platformer.
I was going to mention Forager because
Yep.
the way you talked about it, it sounded a lot like Forager. Did you play that game?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I
I
told you
don't.
about that one.
Did you? I
Mhm.
know. I played it. I like, got deep into it
Yeah.
and lost myself. I was on. I remember it was a trip I took to New York City, and I ended up spending most of my nights just playing Forager. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm in New York City. I could be doing anything. It's like, but I need to make more gold bars.
I do think that you would like this game because of that. Like that, it plays more on that than it does a Satisfactory or a Minecraft. In my opinion.
Yeah, see, I feel like I kind of got my fill, or I scared myself straight after playing
Sure.
Forager, where it's like, oh, I don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But that's cool. Yeah, I'm excited to do a quick look. I think the art style stuff is probably the thing that most appeals to me, just because it has this interesting look to it. I love mixing 2D pixel art with 3D environments.
100%.
I think about like Paper Mario,
Yep.
and there's a handful of other games that do this as well. And I think that's just a really cool style that I really respect. So yeah, I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, I want to play it. I mean, I don't need another game to throw in the pile here in 2023, but especially like Satisfactory will hit 1.0 this year. Like I will absolutely be playing that game again this year for sure. So anyway, Outpath First Journey free on Steam. It's a prologue for the full release. It seems like it's a pretty big prologue, so go check it out. It's really fucking cool. Chase, Johnny typically puts together the news for us and he'll run us through it. If you want to kind of alternate, I'm fine with that. You want to just go through it, I'm fine with that too. We've got
Yeah.
a decent amount of news here.
Yeah, with
Um,
Johnny being sick/dead, I ended up adding most of these things. But yeah, we can run down these things. Do you want to do the first one, or do you want me to take the victory lap?
I will let you, because you've kind of been the one that's pushed this rock for a while now.
I it brings me no pleasure, Bobby. It really doesn't.
I don't think it brings you pleasure. I think it brings you satisfaction.
It definitely there's a definitely a told you so kind of moment to
Yeah.
it, and maybe not tell. Well, I guess it is a little specifically told you because you bought it.
I returned it within
You did
24
return it.
hours of
You
having
learned
it.
real quick. You learned real quick, but you did buy it at one time. Google Stadia. We know it's on its last legs, and we knew this date was coming, but now it is coming fast. Next week,
Yeah.
January 18th, Google Stadia will officially shut down at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. Um, What do we think of Stadia here,
I
Bobby? Is there
so
anything that we need
the,
to say about Stadia?
I will say this. I think that the tech of Stadia worked incredibly well.
Totally.
Well, they never brought the full gamut of and like half the features that they said would be there weren't, but the
Right.
initial playing a game at a high fidelity in 4K worked really well. That was like, I can't deny how well it worked. The marketing and the longevity of it did not. I don't think that Google will stay away from video games. I really don't. I think it might take some
No,
time for
I
them.
mean they still have Android
Yep.
that is the basis for a ton of game related things. So yes, they're not getting out of video games. They're just getting out of this specific type of gaming. And like honestly, I mean that's kind of what I said at the beginning of this whole thing is that this is just it's this is something that Google
It played
does.
out
They
just like you said it would.
because it's happened before. It's not like I'm some amazing mind reader. They've done this with tons of their initiatives where they
What
put it
was that
out there.
Google
It's going to be the
social site, the Google one?
Google Plus.
Man, bring
Yeah,
that back and get rid of Twitter.
sure. I mean, don't
Yeah, don't.
leave Google Plus to die
It's
as well.
already dead.
I mean, I remember I've banged this drum before. I remember using Google Wave back
Yeah,
in the day,
you
and
love
nobody
Google
even
Wave.
knows what the fuck Google Wave
Well,
is
you also
anymore.
wasn't your wasn't Gamer in the Go or still maybe, I don't know, like hosted on one of their services.
Yeah, did Google own FeedBurner?
Yep.
I think they own FeedBurner. I still don't understand how FeedBurner works. I have no idea how
I
I
don't
actually
think
got my
Google
podcast to
remembers
work
how
on
it
there.
works either.
Good point. But this is what Google does. They
Mhm.
they introduce something. It's supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and a handful of months go by, and they forget that it exists, and then they quietly shelve it. And I think this one hurts us because we're gamers. We're excited about video game stuff. The
Yeah.
tech did work. It had a lot of promise, and they didn't do the necessary things to make this a functioning
Here's what I'll say
ecosystem.
I think is a big bummer for it. I am incredibly privileged to be in the spot that I'm at in my life to where I can just buy shit pretty easily that I'm into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really like the idea of cloud gaming because I feel it's not easy to buy gaming hardware across multiple levels. It's also getting harder to do a lot of things right now when it comes to just inflation and finances. If there was a way for like if I was, I mean, even shit, Jude played a lot of stuff on his iPad and loved that. Like there's a lot of kids like that these days where they might not have a console, and if they could like if a parent could spend $7 to $10 a month to get them games to play like that are they can play with their friends, like that's cool. So I don't want to come across as like classist or anything like that because I'm coming from a place where I can play a game on really high end stuff across a wide range of ecosystems. I like the idea of a low entry cost to play video games with your friends. I'm all for that. I think Google is not this like fucking savant when it comes to caring for people across multiple levels either though.
I mean, you're right, but also for Stadia to work well, you need a good internet connection, which is also not a cheap thing and also not a necessarily a very accessible thing either for a lot of people. So even though the service itself was relatively cheap and had some ways of getting free games and like, yes, I'm with you on that. It still was
But
a hurdle for
5G
people
today,
to be a
dude, is
part of.
faster than most home internet and did it great.
Yeah,
And even if they had like most entry phones now will support 5G networking. And I'm not saying that everybody even had that, right? But I agree
sure.
with you,
I
like
mean, it speaks
100%.
to it speaks to the infrastructure of internet in the
Oh
U.S.
God,
that we can
yes,
get better internet on our phones than we can
100%.
from fucking internet companies these days.
I'm
Um,
curious, really quick, just before you either button up or add more to it.
mhm.
I have hardly seen anything from Stadia. Apple like Apple's arcade system seems to be a bigger fucking joke these days than it has been. They got
Bite your tongue. Pocket Card Jockey is coming to Apple Arcade. Matt Jiggy-san Jaguar is hyped as fuck.
Well, sure, that's great, but in comparison to a
Yes, sure.
Netflix at this point, Ubisoft Plus, but like Luna, in my opinion, is the closest thing to a Stadia. Because I don't think xCloud or Xbox Cloud Gaming is like that. I mean, it's similar, but Luna seems to be just like, hey, we got this thing. You can buy our controller and play these games. Like, have fun. Like, okay. Like, they just
Yeah.
seem like we want to do more. Like, we have a game studio. We'll probably put shit out on this platform when that happens. But we'll play.
I think Amazon, I never want to say good things about Amazon, but I think Amazon at least came into this with more of a plan. They own Twitch. They understand. They want to be in the gaming space. They have a real real dedication to this space that Google doesn't. Google is just like, hey, if this thing's the next big thing, great. If it's not, fuck it, we'll just do something else, and just leave everything in their waste. And that I think is the real bummer of this whole story is that Google went out, they bought a bunch of companies, they bought some developers, they got some big names, and then they toiled in nothingness. They didn't really make anything. They didn't get to make the cool things that they could have made. What's the opportunity cost of Google, right, picking up, wasn't Jade Raymond part of that? Like, yeah. So it's like, hey, she could have made a really cool game on literally anything else, but she was too busy being a part of the Google machine and having nothing to show for it. And then when Google goes, well, we're not just going to let all these people go. We want to find other jobs for them within Google. It's like, well, okay, but now you're taking game developers and you're putting them into non-game developer roles in Google. You're even further keeping them from doing the thing that they might have gotten into this business to do, or for us, the gamers, that we'd want to see the results of that labor, and we're just not going to get to see it.
They're like Ubisoft. We'll talk about them in a little bit. They've got issues. Yep. They're not great either. But they're one of the leaders, in my opinion, on, hey, you can just download your shit. Like, you have this game. It's on Steam now. If you have Ubisoft, like, we got you. Like, get it over there. They did a good job with that.
Yeah, I mean, why don't we just transition to Ubisoft right now? Since we're talking about it, I think it's a good one to talk about. So, Ubisoft, they have delayed Skull and Bones once again, amid their other struggles that are going on. So, Ubisoft recently has announced that they said that 3 unannounced games have now been canceled. They're not going to be made. We don't know what those games are. They weren't announced. But also that Skull and Bones was going to be delayed. This is on top of, I think, like another 4 unannounced games that got canceled late last year. So things just don't seem to be going very well. They're projecting a $537 million loss for this upcoming fiscal year. Not great.
No, it's
say that. Mario plus Rabbids, they said, was disappointing sales wise. Critically, great. Critically, I think everybody's on board with that game, but it didn't perform the way they wanted it to. Assassin's Creed had taken some time off, and we saw what came of that, which is good. People liked the Valhalla.
You didn't even highlight what I think is the most asinine piece of this.
Go for it. Tell me what it is.
Their CEO, in a letter to the company, basically told the rest of the company of Ubisoft that the ball is in your court for how successful we will be, and we want everybody to be lean and not
even that. He's like, hey, it's up to you to turn this thing around. Yes. Also, we're slashing all your budgets, so good luck with that. Help us out.
The rumor is that he has been laughed out of the room, quite literally, by trying to force acquisitions and mergers with a bunch of other companies that are just like, why on earth would we do it? Jeff Grubb, I think an actual friend of the show, made a Games Mess morning post the other day, and somebody commented, he either was responding to, it was about Ubisoft, and I don't know if there was a thread with it or not, but somebody had brought up Ubisoft is one of the only major developers that has not landed a live service game that just is stuck. They've tried,
Mhm.
certainly they've tried,
Oh yeah.
and it just has not stuck. And there's a lot of people who think that that could be a holdback from a merger standpoint, like people not wanting to do that, and also just a failure.
Yeah, I guess so. I also don't think that live service games are necessarily this amazing cash cow either. We've seen how Activision and Bungie were dealt with Destiny 2, and how, even to kind of get them off the books, they worked out a deal so Bungie could take that over themselves. Like, if that was such a valuable property for Activision, I don't think they would have let that go. Live service games aren't necessarily some golden goose for people as well. It can kind of be that albatross. But you're right, Ubisoft. Here's my thought on Ubisoft. On one hand, like, they are one of the few big publishers out there that is like, we make fucking video games.
Yeah.
I like their philosophy in that we make video games. We're a place for people to make games. We've got a bunch of studios everywhere in the world, and we're going to give them the resources they need to make games. Like you said, uh, they are early adopters of different technologies. They seem to always kind of come out first on all these things. They try a lot of experimental
Yep.
stuff. I actually think it's really great that they
Yeah, I agree.
have not had a live service thing work for them, because they kind of just try other stuff. And the things that we have seen them try that has kind of worked for them is not necessarily a live service, but having at least increased support for some games. We've seen games that I don't even care about, like Rainbow Six Siege.
Mhm.
That game has gotten a lot of continued support. It's built a community. It's built esports stuff around it. They've really supported that thing. For Honor came out. Didn't give a
Yeah.
fuck about For
I
Honor,
guess that
and a
that one
lot
is
of
one
people
that I see
didn't.
people still pick up.
But yeah, like they've continued to support, even though that game kind of stumbled out of the gate. And I think a lot of people really like For Honor now. The people who stick with it. And then they're still out there making their Assassin's Creeds, making their Far Cries, doing that stuff. And I can't think of a Ubisoft game that came out recently that I was like, oh fuck yeah, I can't wait to play that. It's been a long time since I've
Sure.
really cared about those kinds of games, because I feel like a lot of the Assassin's Creed stuff, even though it's upgraded, is still Assassin's Creed, and the Far Cry stuff is still Far Cry,
Uh,
even though you kind of keep bolting stuff onto it.
I want to go back to that tweet from Jeff really quick.
Sure.
It's a poll that he ran. It's got 11 hours left. There's been just shy of 9,500 votes on this so far. Are there any Ubisoft games coming soon that you are hopeful for? 30.7% answered yes, while 69.3% have said no.
Of those 30%, I'd ask the question, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what
I
game?
I
What
I
game
would
are you
like to
excited about?
play. I like Assassin's Creed games. I enjoy those.
I liked Assassin's Creed games. They killed me. They killed me with Assassin's Creed 3, and I haven't really been able to come back. I tried to come back with Origins and thought it was kind of cool, but kind of the magic had passed, and I've been done with
So
it. I know
I don't know
you
what's going to
continued
happen
to
with
play
them.
Odyssey and Valhalla and enjoyed those, but I just kind of lost the magic for it.
Chase,
Um,
you want me to take this next one about Xbox?
yeah, go for it.
So Xbox has finally formally announced the rumored direct that they're going to be hosting on January 25th. They did put in there, by the way, we are not going to be showing off Starfield. There will be a special. So what's interesting is this is a Xbox Arcane Bethesda presentation, but they're not going to be showing off Starfield. I'm
I
going to
mean,
give you
if you're not, it's good that you say early, we're not going to show Starfield. Like,
yes.
don't get people in a Silk Song
Yeah.
throng. Don't get them in a Mother 3. Maybe it'll happen this time. Just get it out there early. Hey guys, this ain't this one.
They said that they're going to give it a dedicated space to really show it off. I don't.
Sure.
So the last time we heard anything about this game, they had said all these games are going to be releasing within 12 months of this presentation, which I believe was in June. I do not think Starfield launches until probably November. It would be I wonder if they would do 11-11 again, just to be facetious. But
Sure.
I look, they need all the help they can get. I still think it's going to come out half baked anyway they shake it. We'll see what happens. But it's starting to become a little humorous. Like, I'm not saying it's like a Beyond Good and Evil 2, but when I look at
Yeah.
Microsoft,
Hey, back to Ubisoft.
back to Ubisoft, what I've noticed is that Halo Infinite sucked. It was not good in a campaign, and it took them over a year with multiple delays to deliver Forge, and there's still shit that they haven't been able to pack into that thing that they promised. So
Yeah.
Microsoft is going to need to really put their money out there, I think, on this 25th for other properties and say like, hey, this studio, this is that we picked up, this game is out this day. Here's some third party shit here. Like, they need to,
Totally with you. Like
yeah,
they have we've seen for a couple of years now.
almost
A
five,
few, a few,
almost five.
quite a few years now of just them buying up things,
Yep.
and with a few exceptions, it's mostly just felt like they've just amassed stuff
Oh yeah.
and not done anything with it.
Yep.
We know all these places are working on things. Like we know
And game, we
stuff's
know it's tough
happening.
to make games and COVID. We know all that.
And COVID, yeah. But and we have seen some stuff. We've seen Psychonauts 2 come out. That was something before that had been worked on before before Double Fine got bought. We've seen the stuff from Obsidian that has come out recently. Which is good stuff. We like Pentiment. We like what's the other one? What's the Grounded? We like Grounded.
Grounded a whole lot.
But yeah, like I think this is a good call for them to say we're gonna make. I think it's kind of dumb that they're calling it a direct. That's a little owned by somebody out there. But okay, that's a term that people know, I guess. So I think I would love for this show to be Arcane, boom, boom, boom. Here's the things we're doing. Lionhead, boom, boom, boom. Here's the things we're doing. Obsidian, boom, boom, boom. I just want them to kind of go down that list of, hey, remember all the people we bought? Here's all the stuff they're making. Certainly, we're not going to get all these things, but they have said we will probably see Redfall. We'll probably see Forza Motorsport, not Horizon Motorsport. So we don't care, but cool for somebody.
Sickos do.
Minecraft Legends. We'll probably have something out there as well. So we will see some stuff, and Bethesda will have things. They just won't have Starfield. So
I'm sure there'll be like an ESO expansion. I'm sure there'll be something with that.
I mean, obviously, Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be there instead, right?
Yeah, I would like to see. I would love an update on Fable. I really would like to know where that game's at.
Sure.
Wet Perfect 2? Dark. What's that?
Wet 2, the sequel to Wet.
Yes.
Fine Bethesda property.
I'd like to see them do something that we haven't heard yet. Like, hey, one of these studios, maybe there's like a cool indie project. I would also like, I don't know if they will do it. I would like a remake at this point in time of New Vegas. I would love to see that.
I would like it too. The problem is who would you have work on it? I would want it to be Obsidian, but they're already working on Outer Worlds 2. Avowed. They've got other irons in the fire. To your point, I'd like to see some stuff that I don't know about. What's Double Fine working on since Psychonauts 2 is done?
No idea.
For a long time, they were making lots of tiny titles, and I'd kind of like to see them go back to that because I think they had a lot of really inventive things. Show some stuff off. Put Tim Schafer out there. Let me see that guy's face.
This does roll into just some concerns that have been rising up, though. We talk about these studios. While Ubisoft is asking for help to be picked up, Microsoft is asking for help to pick up. Not necessarily Ubisoft in this case, but with Activision. And people are raising some questions about this, Chase. There are some people who are very much against it and some people who are optimistic but concerned.
Yeah, in and out of the gaming space, there's been some concerns. We've talked about this before. We talked about it when it got announced that the acquisition was proposed and we thought happening. But being something this big as Microsoft and being an acquisition that's this big, you're not going to get the FTC involved when you try to buy Double Fine. no big deal.
Right.
But when you try to buy one of the biggest publishers out there, um, that does raise some questions about monopolistic tendencies and competitive behavior. And so Google, Nvidia, and Sony have all expressed some amount of concern to the FTC about this Microsoft Activision deal. The FTC itself, before this stuff has happened, already has sued to try to block this deal. They think there's enough there where they think this deal shouldn't go through. Um, so some other details here. There's an in-house trial that is scheduled for August. So again, going to be a very long-running thing. This is going to take a while for it to play out one way or the other. Sony had talked about this stuff before, where they're like, "Hey, this is kind of bad for gaming, don't you think?"
Yes.
And Microsoft comes out and was like, yeah, I mean, their specific term is that Sony's concerns are self-serving and overstate the importance of Activision's catalog. And from a Microsoft standpoint, totally understand why you'd say that. But also, even though I understand where you're coming from on Sony, like, yeah, your major competition is saying this is a little unfair. And that kind of sounds like sour grapes. I think it's also kind of true. Like, they've just been buying up so many things, and when one of the biggest games still around is Call of Duty, and Microsoft says, "Hey, we want that, and we're going to take that. Oh, by the way, we're also going to take World of Warcraft while we're at it. We're just going to take all these things." I get
think
the
it's
argument.
funny. I get it too. I do get it. I think it's funny though. The FTC is like making such a big production for this one.
Yeah.
When there's not the exact same thing by any stretch. Disney has bought ESPN. They've bought Marvel Studios.
Yeah.
They've bought
ABC.
fucking ABC. They've bought Star Wars. They have LucasArts.
Yep.
And they just like, there was never a moment where that slowed down.
So there is a podcast that Waypoint put out around the end of last year where they talked to a lawyer specifically about this kind of stuff. Is it a lawyer or is it somebody involved? I can't remember. It's an expert at the very least about this kind of monopoly stuff and how the courts work with this and how the FTC works and why some things get blocked and why they don't. And I think it's a really interesting listen. Even honestly, I think the game stuff is maybe the least interesting part about it. But this guy goes into the history of how monopolies are viewed in America and in the court system itself. Thought that was really fascinating stuff. When they get into the actual video game stuff, I think it gets a little cringier, but I think the stuff in there, one of the things he said though is that these are the way we view monopolies, the way we view corporations that are going after acquisitions. It changes over time, and it has changed over this period of time. And you also get different judges, you get different people in places of power, also different presidencies that are the ones appointing these judges, who some are a little bit more pro-business and are going to allow more of these monopolistic tendencies. Some of these cases are just straight up bullshit, where there was one recently where a judge is like, "Hey, by the way, I'm in a country club with the lawyer who's arguing that we should that this merger should go through. We play golf all the time. I just kind of want to mention that as like a potential conflict of interest, but I don't think it's really going to be a conflict, so fuck it, it's going to be okay." And then he said, "Yeah, the merger was totally fine." Seems a little fucked up when you put it like that. Yeah. So I'm with you. There's a bit of a whataboutism of how can you let Disney get so big and then say, "No, Microsoft, you can't do this." But at the same time, I don't think two wrongs make a right here.
No, I'm not saying that either.
Sure. This is a conversation I think we should have another time, because I know we're running low on time now. We have a couple other things that I want to get to here, but I think we need to have another discussion about Game Pass sometime, because we're still at a point where Game Pass is a really good deal, and we talk about it a lot. It's the best game. It's the best deal in gaming. There's so much good stuff on Game Pass. I finally got into the Game Pass after a while of kind of resisting it because it's just too good of a deal. But I think there's a discussion to be had about when does that party end, and when does Microsoft having too much power make Game Pass something bad. And I think we can start to look at something like what Netflix is today, about how, you know, that it can turn a corner quick, and that it can get into something that kind of sucks, and it kind of sucks for everybody. But there's nothing you can do about it because you've let this thing get too big. So that's a discussion we can have another time. Let's move on.
We have one story left, I think.
We have one more story. I think this one's kind of fun, and it should also be kind of short. In an article that was on Video Games Chronicle, there was a research study out there, and it found that 71% of UK PS5 owners say that the PS5 is their main console, versus 48% who said the Xbox Series X was their main console, as well as some other ones. We'll go into some of the numbers here. I just found that interesting. Again, this is like a super small sample size because it's the UK. It's also a very biased sample size because I think the UK has mostly been pro Sony over the years. Not that Microsoft hasn't broken in there, or Nintendo for that matter, but I think I'd view like Japan being more Sony and Nintendo, America being more Microsoft and Sony, and UK being more Sony and Nintendo more than Microsoft generally. That's not to say these consoles don't exist there, but I think that's something that could skew these numbers. So let me go down the full list of numbers, because I think some of this stuff is kind of cool here too. So 71%, that 71% number that we saw in this study here, that is for the disc version specifically of the PS5. The PS5 digital, 43% say that's their main console. So it drops off a steep cliff when you so it's a little misleading to say 71% of PS5 owners, because it's the disc version specifically. So 71% for PS5, 49% for the Switch, 48% for Xbox Series X, 43% for PS5 digital, 38% for Xbox One X, 35% for Xbox Series S. So
it's not surprising to me.
It's not. It's really not. Because
the reason I think, so I have this conversation. Honestly, I have this conversation a lot at work, and people are always like, "Hey, you like video games? I'm wanting to get a new console. What should I get?" And I will tell you, most people, I've stopped asking like what games they want to play. I said, if you had access to like more games, would you play more games, or are you only going to play one game? And it's not about like, you know, not everybody's going to play the obscure fucking indie games. Not everybody's going to play every sports game. Not everybody's going to play every AAA. So if they wanted to go like the Netflix route, I think value-wise, they're obviously getting more of a chance to play other things with people on Xbox. Mm-hmm. And then like the way I personally go about it is PlayStation has some incredibly good story-driven first-party stuff that I love. I treat the Xbox platform as the spot to check out and play universally launched games. And I think having like people who have an Xbox would want the games on Sony, while people who have a PlayStation, there's not a reason today. Now that could change, but today and since the life of the 4, there's not been a single game that I could see them being like, I got to have an Xbox.
Yeah, I think another factor in there, and you're kind of touching on it a little bit, is that a PS5 is not a PC.
No.
A Nintendo Switch is not a PC.
No.
An Xbox and a PC, kind of functionally the same thing. So I feel like when somebody asks you, Bobby, you know, I've got some money, I want to buy a game console, probably another question that you bring up to them is, would you consider a PC?
Yeah.
because one, you're getting a video game console in there. You're going to get every single Xbox game they make because that's how this
That's how
works.
they do it. Yeah.
But
That's
also
why I
you
jumped
get
off the
you get a
Xbox.
PC. Yeah, like you don't own an Xbox.
No.
Wait, do you own an Xbox?
Mm-mm.
Did you get rid of it? Did you have one at all? Yeah,
I
yeah.
had the Series X. Wait, hang on. I had the One X.
You had the One X. You didn't get a
Yeah.
Series X. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you didn't feel the need to get a Series X because you have a PC. I don't feel the need to get any sort of Xbox because now I have a PC.
Totally.
I do still feel the need to have my PlayStation. There's things that I can only play on a PlayStation that matters, and that stuff matters to me. And then the Switch, I think a lot of people see the Switch as, well, that's my second console. That's a thing where I can play just the Nintendo games. That's a thing where I can play the small games. Maybe that's something my kids have, and I can play a game on it every once in a while as well. But I don't think a lot of people are out there saying Switch is their primary console. I would probably be the weirdo who says that, but again, I'm in the relative minority.
I've felt for a while that the Xbox platform has become, this is too good of a value. Like, and that's like, people got Netflix for House of Cards.
Mm-hmm.
They stuck around for all the other shit, and they checked out new things, and it becomes that binge mentality. Like, well, I watched a few episodes. Like, I hear that all the time. Yeah, I checked a few episodes out, and if this was 20 years ago, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And so same thing here, like Game Pass. Oh yeah, I can check out a few games. Yeah, it's not for me, but I had some time to check out something new before this game. So it makes sense to have that. And then to say, like, do I want Mario games again? Do I want Zelda games? Maybe I'll grab a Switch to go with this. Or to your point, that God of War game seems pretty cool. That Demon Souls remake looks awesome. Maybe I'll grab it. I'll get those games, and then I'll play those while checking out other stuff. Like, I could see, it's weird. It's not a surprising. It's just a strange pull, because it's almost like, well, yeah, no shit. Like, why would it be the other way around?
Right. And it is strange, kind of, to go back to the PC thing. This isn't like which of these owners only had one console. It's what they say their primary console is, and not having PC on this list, I think you're kind of doing a disservice to the other options here, because I think if you combined PC and Xbox, that would probably be higher than PlayStation.
I think so too.
But this poll didn't see PC as an Xbox, whereas you and I think a lot of people out there do see those things as being synonymous, whereas a PlayStation 5 is not a PC. There's like that is a game console that has specific games on it. And yes, Sony's getting better about putting out PC ports, but it's not like what Xbox is doing, where those are the same thing. Totally. So I think it's a weird thing. There's also one other thing I'd like to point out. Being in the UK, shit's fucked over there, economy wise. And I think it's fascinating that PlayStation 5 disc version had 71% and PlayStation 5 digital version was 43%. Why that big of a jump between those two things?
If it's the people in America who are poaching them were able to sell them at a lower rate to folks
maybe
in the UK.
I'm not saying that's not a factor, but I think a factor in it as well is knowing that the price of video game hardware and software is really high in the UK.
Yeah.
If you bought a system that can play discs, that means you can go and you can get those secondhand discs, and those secondhand discs are cheaper than a brand new version. And if you buy the digital one, you can only get the brand new version. You have to wait for specific sales that Sony does. And so if I was somebody in the UK and I had limited money and somehow I already bought this PS5 and have a PS5 now, I don't have money to buy another console, obviously, because Jesus Christ, I bought a PS5. It's so fucking expensive. I'd want the disc one because that's the one I know I can at least find some cheap games at a store. If I buy the digital one, then I'm stuck, and I have to find cheap games. I have to buy more indie titles. Am I going to buy God of War Ragnarok Day One digitally? I don't know. That game's really expensive. But if I can find a secondhand copy, a couple months after release, that's knocks off $15 pounds off the price,
Yes.
then maybe I can go with that. So I think that's interesting. I'd really be interested to see what a poll like this that adds PC in it would be if you talk to people in the US about it. I'd really like to see that breakdown here.
It's very fascinating.
I'd also like to see Japan, just because Xbox would be like 2%, and I just kind of want to see that. I want it confirmed.
I think that does wrap us up on the stories, though, right?
I believe it does.
Let me hop us over to credits, and we'll wrap
Sure.
this thing up. This is a weird week. I was out of town. We talked about that at the beginning of the week, and it was work, and I just was out of my element, and I wasn't able to juggle working and the editing of everything this week.
Hey, all good. It was kind of nice to have a chill Monday where I just played a lot of Chained Echoes, and that was pretty great.
So our schedule on this deck that you're looking at here is not correct, but this week we just have this podcast. We tomorrow night, Johnny has COVID. He's going to be out. We were going to play Risk of Rain 2 this week. I think Chase and I might play that on Monday.
I can see that.
I think we're going to sneak that in probably on Monday and maybe unlock some new classes.
I've purchased the PC version of that game, so I haven't played it at all, so I'd be going in fresh on a fresh copy of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we can play that at a better frame rate, and that'll be nice for the stream. But yeah, I would love to jump back in and play more of that.
I think we're going to do that. And then next week is just going to be another What You've Been Playing episode of the show. We'll definitely have a Monday stream. Depending on how Johnny's feeling, we might not have a Friday stream, but
or maybe I'd come back for a Friday stream. We'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it for us right now. This episode, if you're listening to it, go check out one of our video on demands. You can follow along with all that stuff. Casualhour.com is the easiest way, but at the Casual Hour, I've been doing a lot of stuff with video on TikTok and with Reels on Instagram, so you can check out some clips of prior streams. Been trying to go back and actually make clips this year. That's another self resolution I've given myself, to go and capture some of the highlights for our hangouts here. Chase, I linked to your stuff earlier when you were talking about the River King. Is that right?
Legend of the River King, yeah.
But you've got a few other things going on besides playing old games.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Supposedly. Yeah, definitely. Like we mentioned before, go in and check out gamersonthego.com. Read the review. I guess that's kind of a review. I wrote it as a review, but I don't know if it's really a review exactly. But I wrote about Legend of the River King. You can go see about that. I have Gamers on the Go as a podcast. I haven't done much with it recently. Maybe sometime in 2023 I'll figure out what I actually want to do with that podcast and make some new ones. We'll see. I did move over to a new podcast host for that, so it's a lot easier to make new episodes of that. I just need to find the time and find some people who are into it and do it. We've still had some fun capture card stuff going on with this new PC. So at the moment, I'm still on hiatus for my Cowbots and Aluminum stream of
maybe I'll pop over
Heist
tomorrow and take a look at it.
We'll talk about it. Yeah. But I do plan to get back to recording more gameplay stuff over the course of this year. I've been watching YouTube videos about this game. I've been looking up some strategies. I've been just theory crafting a bunch of stuff in my head about a game I really, really want to play for Chasey K Plays. So that's something that will happen in 2023. I just need to get this thing sorted, and then to also finish SteamWorld Heist so I can get to it. But cool stuff there. And yeah, and then a pilot program. Yeah, I should mention the podcast I do with our good friend of the show, Pierce Corshane. We recorded and put out a new episode on MASH recently, so you can go listen to that. It was a good time. I've actually been watching a lot more MASH now that we're done with the episode, and I can watch more than just the pilot episode. I've been watching more of that show and been enjoying it. And we announced what our next one is going to be, and that's going to be in living color, which
Oh,
is
cool.
the sketch comedy show that one Jim Carrey was a part of. So I've never seen In Living Color before, so I'm excited to watch that and talk about that. And we have a couple other ones that we know what we're going to do. We know that the schedule's going to be. It hasn't been announced yet, but we'll talk about those as they come out. But we've got a giant list of all the things we'd like to do. But we know the next couple that are going to happen here, and I'm pretty excited for those too. So you can check that
Awesome.
out at Pilot Program there on the link tree, and you'll find those episodes.
Sounds great. So again, we won't be back live tomorrow, but come back on Monday for Risk Rain 2, and we will see you all then. Take care, everyone.